Public sector agencies face a difficult challenge today of managing legacy systems and processes while simultaneously striving to meet the escalating expectations of the public. Constituents now more than ever expect the same seamless, efficient, and personalized experiences from government services that they receive from leading private sector companies. That's where specialized technology systems integrators partnering with cloud leaders like Amazon Web Services are emerging as a crucial enabler to public sector agencies. And they bring not just technical expertise, but also a deep domain knowledge of public sector intricacies, helping agencies navigate these complex transformations. I'm Wyatt Cash with Scoop News Group, and joining us to talk about how agencies can benefit from this expertise and achieve greater efficiencies for the public more quickly is Jeff Martinez, Vice President, State and Local Government and Education at Rackspace. Jeff, thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me. Pleasure.
So I'd like to start by asking, from your vantage point, working with numerous public sector organizations, what are the most persistent IT challenges they face in delivering efficient constituent services, and how have traditional technology solutions attempted to address these?
That's a great question. So, as you know, the public sector is a very unique industry. It is full of professionals that have dedicated their lives to serving constituents, students, nonprofit organizations, communities, families. And so, you have sometimes limited resources in some cases and others well-funded. But ultimately, I think, delivering the efficient services that constituents really need, the support, the help, the access, the renewals, all the things that are important to families and individuals, to include students, financial aid applications, right, is a good example. I think IT and CIOs in these organizations continue to be challenged with, keeping up with emerging technologies, making sure that it's different than commercial, right? So they can't just jump into an emerging technology. They have to really build a strategy and understand exactly how they're going to protect constituent data, how they're going to protect the environments that these systems, these applications sit on. And so AWS does a great job. And oh, by the way, Rackspace and AWS have had a long, long history of partnerships, friendships, and more importantly, serving customers together. So in my opinion, those are really, I think, the challenges that CIOs in the public sector community really have today is, providing that access, staying up with emerging technologies, and making sure they're protecting from a security compliance perspective.
Where are you seeing traditional IT solutions most often falling short? And sort of what are the consequences of those limitations if they don't modernize?
I think if they're stagnant or they don't modernize, now I haven't met a CIO that's not willing to modernize. But again, the pace of public sector is just different. The risk involved, the challenges and the responsibility, more importantly, that they have to protect and to adhere to policy standards and compliance and security parameters is just a little different than most cases, right? And so when you think about what it is that's my children's a good example. They want everything instantaneously, right? So they wanted a swipe, they want to push a button, and they want everything to be there to include all the information and the access. And to provide those kinds of services, I think it's the CIOs and their staff, it's their responsibility for them to make sure they have those foundational strategies around data governance, foundational strategy around frameworks that allows them to really build those environments in a safe way, in a safe manner to provide that access and acceleration. And so in regards to traditional services, I think less about consequences for me, more about providing the access and acceleration at the right pace for public sector to ensure that, again, that the security, compliance, and the data is protected properly.
Can you elaborate a little bit more on the specific value proposition when an agency or institution, combines AWS's cloud capabilities with the expertise of a specialized partner like your firm? How does that partnership really accelerate the agency's path to kind of more tangible efficiency gains, if you will?
And this is my favorite part, right? Working with AWS, because we both agree and we're lockstep on making sure that we keep the customer in our target, in our focus, right? And so making sure that we're approaching CIOs and their staffs in those organizations, whether it's state, local, higher education, nonprofits, even in healthcare, right? We want to make sure that we understand and be clear on the why. Now, it's not our why we're there. We all know why we're there, to help out and enable if possible. But more importantly, understand the strategy, understand the why the organization, and how we can help, better understand what the challenges are. And sometimes the best way to do that is to really listen to the CIOs and their staff to understand, one, their critical mission, because every critical mission in public sector is very unique. And then understanding their roadmap, their processes, the security policies and standards, and being able to translate technology to business outcomes for their constituents or for their customers. And I think that's one of the things that AWS and Rackspace really have in common. The next thing I think is most important, and I love the way we do things together and how customers really value from the partnership with Rackspace and AWS, is we start to dispel the myths of multi-cloud, right? So I'll give you an example. A lot of the folks that we meet with will say, well, we're going to do multi-cloud. We're going to go public cloud only because everyone's doing it, or they think they need to keep up with the emerging technologies. The truth is, if you don't have the right strategies, it's not for everyone, and not everyone's having a great experience. So working with Rackspace and AWS, it allows us to really understand the critical mission, to really understand the pace of evolution that they need and the innovation that they want, because their missions are critical. There's not a second chance for that. They've got to get it right, right? So the other myth is it will save money. So they think it's a good idea. They buy a shiny object. We call it avoiding the shiny object syndrome at Rackspace. And so they're thinking that this technology, this product, is going to be the answer. And quite honestly, sometimes it isn't. Operationally, it could inject issues and concerns with processes already in place. It could inject or add complexities into their cloud security and create potential decline in that posture. And so we just want to kind of walk through that. And AWS and Rackspace really do that well, so that once we get the information, once we are aligned, and more importantly, once we understand their strategy and their mission, then we can really start to maximize what AWS does and the services they provide.
Can you share an example of where and how AWS, working with Rackspace, for example, has improved an agency's operations or its ability to engage with their constituents more effectively?
Absolutely. So again, we've had a long history with AWS here at Rackspace. And so out of the 1,000 instances we work together, I'll give you one of the most strategic, which is one of the largest states here in the US, one of the largest economies in the world as a state. And so they were on a trajectory of providing public cloud services. At the time, their processes were in place. That's what they're really good at. Process compliance and security is really their focus, to make sure that they're doing things correctly in the right way and protecting folks and constituents. But the methodology of how they were providing cloud services, which should be a little more expedited and accelerated when you think about versus private cloud. And that's the assumption, and that is true if done correctly. And so working with AWS, we were able to build self-serve services by having parameters and guidelines that allowed the state agencies to really go through and allocate services, do implementation, and do it in a self-serve manner, because the state agencies have numerous experts that know what they're doing. They just need the enablement to be able to provide the services to their organization and or to their constituents. And so together, AWS and Rackspace was able to provide processes, services, and more importantly, the training and the knowledge to be able to provide expedited services to their constituents in this large state. And the result is that the growth of public cloud for AWS grew significantly. And I mean, not just like 10%, 20%, and I mean hundreds, over 200% growth trajectory that allowed the constituents to really get the value of what the public cloud can offer them through the agency and the services and the critical support that they provide. And so I think that's probably our largest and our best. We've been doing that for a number of years right now.
Appreciate that. And then lastly, for public sector leaders looking to modernize further, particularly under today's budget constraints and so forth, and certainly as they want to enhance efficiency, what key advice would you offer, or what critical questions should they be asking themselves now, and their potential partners to ensure that they are on the right trajectory?
I think that's a great question. From their perspective, I think most CIOs that I meet with, they understand the direction they're going. They understand the business outcomes that they want. Um, but it's the process to build genuine relationships with with partner vendors. CIOs and organizations anywhere we've gone, they want to work with people that they trust. And so that's the bottom line. And so you have to, as a vendor, as a partner vendor, you have to be able to invest in their mission, not just the opportunity that makes the sale, right? And CIOs are the best at sniffing that out, right? So from the CIO perspective, I would say continue to focus on building those genuine relationships with organizations and companies like Rackspace and AWS who approach those missions to really figure out a way to understand enough to be able to do with and not just do for. The other thing is, understanding their challenges. Every public sector, every organization has one. Understanding their challenges, and understanding, the CIOs are committed to delivering vital support, assistance, and aid. And so you have to look through that lens, and the CIO is looking through that lens every day, all day long. And so being able to work with somebody who's really focused on the delivery, more importantly, delivery with cost efficiency, with more security in mind, and streamlining access for their constituents or their internal employees. I think those are the things that state agencies or public sector entities should really be focused on.
That's great advice. Well, Jeff Martinez, thank you so much for taking a few minutes to share your insights on, how partners working with an AWS can really help state and local governments and institutions get to their goals faster and more efficiently. So thank you so much for being with us.
Hey, thank you for the opportunity. Take care.